Hello, friends, and welcome to the Handyman Success Podcast. Our mission is to teach and inspire by sharing the stories and insights of our guests. Whether you're a prospective, new, or seasoned handyman business owner, you will learn practical business tips you can apply today and be inspired that you can reach your goals and create a better tomorrow. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Call, owner of Handyman Marketing Pros. We equip small, family-owned handyman businesses with modern websites and SEO to help grow their businesses online. I'm joined by my co-host, Alan Lee, who has built his handyman business to a point where it runs without him. He now teaches others, step by step, how to do the same thing through his Handyman Journey business coaching. You can learn more about our marketing and coaching services by scheduling a call with us on handymansuccess.net. So whether you're patching drywall, sitting in the office, or making your third run to Home Depot, we invite you to pull up a chair and sit with us on another episode of the Handyman Success Podcast. Today, we're joined by AJ with the Greenshire Handyman. He's located in Schertz, Texas, in the San Antonio area. AJ, thanks so much for joining us, man. If you don't mind, give us a little lay of the land, a little snapshot of your business, and we'll kind of just go from there.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, let me say thanks for the opportunity to come on the podcast. I've learned a lot from the podcast. I've listened to every episode that you guys have put out. I've been an active member in the Facebook group, and I believe what you guys are doing is you're building a collective group of knowledge across all the handymen. It didn't exist before, so I appreciate that. With that being said, I'll give a little bit of background. This podcast is probably a little different than some of the previous ones because, as far as I know, I'm the only guy who started part-time and decided to stay part-time. So I started my business called Greenshire Handyman in the Schertz, San Antonio area of Texas in 2022, kind of by accident. I had a neighbor that was looking for some help. She couldn't find anybody. I kind of volunteered to help out and then kind of fell in love with it. So I've been part-time since that point. I'm an LLC. I started off as a sole proprietor for about 6 months and then went to LLC because I thought I had to go to LLC. In retrospect, I didn't. But I set up the LLC, and just a little tip, probably throughout the podcast, I'll leave little tips of things that I did that may be helpful to some people. Because I see these questions pop up a lot. Should I hire somebody to set up my LLC or my business, or should I just do it myself? And it's kind of like a 50-50 response. The people who've been in business for a while, like, just do it yourself. And the people who just set up, so I didn't know what I was doing. So go ahead and hire somebody. So I used a company called Inkfile. I'm not affiliated with them, but I see a lot of guys and ladies that kind of recommend that. So I got that set up. And I've been working, like I said, ever since on a part-time basis. The reason I've decided to stay part-time, and we'll get into this a little bit later, probably in the podcast, is I have a little bit of a golden handcuff situation with my daytime job where it's tough for me to leave. I have a lot of benefits on the table. To be honest, when I first started this, we were in the middle of the Great Resignation right after COVID, and then quiet quitting and all these movements that were happening. So like a lot of other people, I wanted to quit my day job and just do this full time because I love doing handyman stuff. And I'll talk about my why for doing that a little bit later on. But I got the golden handcuff situation. And then in addition, I have the ability to kind of work around the world. I lived in Japan for 5 years from 2015 to 2020. Absolutely loved it. I want to go back, and my ticket back there is my day job. So if I leave that, it kind of throws it off the rails a little bit. But that's a little bit about my business. I know we'll get a little further into it as we get into the conversation.
So our listeners know, like as AJ mentioned, like AJ is a by design part-time handyman, and our podcast, a Handyman Success Podcast, we always say success looks different for everybody, and so we're super excited, AJ, to like share your story and being like a dedicated, like by design side hustle, but a professional side hustle that's done right, and to share that perspective with folks, because there's certainly a lot of people out there where this is the best option for them, or at the very least, it is a transition period, because a lot of folks, they start part-time and then they leave their job. So it's really cool to have you here because you're part-time and like that's your goal. Like you're meeting your goal with that. So I'm out of curiosity, like what is your job or your career, if you don't mind sharing? And also like what prompted you to start the handyman business?
Okay. Yeah. So what prompted me to start it, I mentioned it earlier about a neighbor kind of asking for some help. I've always been handy my whole life. I went to carpentry school in high school and some other things. But to go back to your first question, the day job, I'm currently a data scientist or an operations research analyst. So I'm a nerd with a spreadsheet, and I use a bunch of different tools to take large amounts of information and kind of synthesize it together. That's what I'm currently doing throughout my career. I'm retired from the Navy. I was a flight engineer, an avionics technician, a crew chief on P3 airplanes and Gulfstream airplanes, like really cool, like corporate jets. Been all around the world doing that. In the civilian side, I've been working for the federal government since 2005, primarily in major weapon systems acquisition for the Navy. So we buy, all the aircraft that the Navy has, F-18s, F-35s, H-1 helicopters, or whatever it may be. I was involved with the government entity that kind of works with the manufacturers to produce those. I've been to a lot of aircraft factories around the world, and both a data scientist perspective, a logistics kind of perspective, a program manager in various aspects. So I have a ton of experience in that. I spent 5 years over in Japan as a war planner, getting ready for potential conflict in the Indo-PACOM area of operations. Can't talk too much about that, but just rest assured, there's a lot of people that think about that kind of stuff and make sure that we're prepared for that. So that was a very stressful job. I left that in 2020, moved to San Antonio, kind of sight unseen, and I've just continued doing data science stuff. And my day job's okay, right? It's not something I love and I'm super passionate about, but it pays very, very well. I have pretty good benefits, and it allows me to do handyman stuff on the side. So that kind of sums up where I'm at right now and why I do it.
That's awesome. And what does that look like? Like you say, you're part-time handyman. So what are those like hours like? Are you, because I envision like, are you working like 9 to 5 and then at 6 to 10 p.m. you put on your handyman cape and go to work? Or what does that look like? What does your
Yeah,
schedule look like?
pretty much. It's evolved. It's evolved to a tighter schedule. When I first started off and I got into it, it was like every day. Every day, as soon as I'm off of work, because the phone just kept ringing and ringing. I was getting all sorts of inquiries. And very quickly, my work-life balance got way out of whack. My wife would look at the schedule. She's like, "Are you working Tuesday night and Wednesday night and Thursday night?" I'm like, "Yeah, isn't it great?" And she's like, "No, we have swim team lessons and we have this and we have all those other things." So I've evolved. Right? I don't watch Pokemon, but I understand the theory of Pokemon, how they evolve. Right. So I started off as a Pikachu that was just full of energy, and then I moved on to different, more powerful things. So nowadays, like if I fast forward to where I am right now, I primarily only work every other Fridays. I'll stack jobs because my day job allows me to compress my work week where I can get every other Friday off. So I'll stack multiple jobs on a Friday, open some slots on a Saturday, perhaps if I don't have anything going on with the family. And my wife and I sit down with the schedule and make sure, okay, this is open, you can work this, you can work that. And then if they're really small jobs, maybe a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, I'll go do a 2 hour job, like a fan swap out. But that's what I do right now, and I schedule out. Like, currently, I'm scheduled out until June sometime because of that limited availability, and I have a pretty solid base because I built my brand up over time. So it's pretty steady and pretty smooth right now.
So, one thing that comes to mind for me is expectations with your clients, because obviously they probably know that you do this on the side, it's
Yeah.
part-time. So, I guess if you don't mind fleshing out, like, how is that expectation set? Like, what communications do you have? Like, what kind of clients maybe like they enjoy that? Is there anyone that's been turned off by that? Just the nature of the client experience working with someone who's coming over on the evenings or the weekends.
Yeah, by and large, people like it, right? Because people want you there when they're there. There's a little bit. It's been weird with with COVID and everybody kind of working from home, but it's been very receptive to me to come over on a Saturday, to come over on a weekday night. People are like, "Wow, okay, that's great." And I'm not an hour range kind of guy. I'm not like I'll be there between noon and 4 o'clock. I'll be there at noon exactly. Actually, I'll be 5-10 minutes early. So I get a good reception from that. But some people don't like it, right? Some people like if you call me up and if you go to my website, it'll say, "Hey, I'm busy. I'm probably booked out for weeks." So I try to set the expectations from that perspective, either through that or through automatic responses on Facebook and some other platforms that I use. But those who need somebody tomorrow, I'm not their guy, and I try to explicitly put that out in every marketing platform that I have to put that out. And at this point in time, I have 390 followers on Facebook. Same thing on Nextdoor. So my general clientele understand and know, and my presence on social media, I reinforce that statement. I just put a post out yesterday that, hey, I'm booked out right now. And I put that out for two reasons: to let people know I'm booked out, and to put that bit of scarcity in there as well. Like, oh, I better get this guy while he's hot. I'm not going to get on the schedule. So that's kind of how I manage it. I always get the people who need somebody tomorrow, and that's usually my first qualifying question. If they go through my gauntlet and they actually get to me, I'll be like, okay, first question is, when do you need this done? Because right now I'm looking 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. That's how I manage it, and that's how I work with it.
Okay.
And what type of work do you typically do? Do you do kind of small maintenance style stuff, or are you getting into like bathroom remodels, or what does it look like for your particular job?
It's, if you sum it up, it's jobs that are 3 hours or less. That's what I stick to. And another tip for the folks starting out, and I think Alan, you went through this, and everybody goes through this, right? I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do every kind of job, and if I don't know it, I'm gonna be in the attic watching YouTube and figure it out. I think you had a video on that a while back. You were watching YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
And I tried to YouTube like drywall, and I suck at drywall. I'm absolutely terrible at drywall. So over time, that Pokemon example, like I've evolved. I don't do like I got rid of that power. I no longer have the drywall power. I've narrowed it down to the jobs I know I can do quickly, that I'm very competent in. I don't really have to study, and I can estimate really, really quickly. My ideal job, if I could just do one job and get enough work, would be cabinet hardware installation, because I have the tools to do it. It's a quick, clean job. I'm not sweating my butt off. But in reality, I do a lot of fans and fixtures, door adjustments, custom small carpentry work, planter boxes. There's a seasonality to it. But it all generally falls underneath that 3 hour window and within 15 to 20 minutes of my house.
You mentioned people kind of going through the gauntlet and they finally get to you. So as what does your sales like kind of funnel look like? Because obviously working a normal like day job, like you can't just answer the phone all the time. So how do you like, I guess, what is your sales process, your kind of funnel look like? And is there any kind of unique differences that you would have compared to someone who's full time?
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk about marketing, and then we'll talk about sales. So from a marketing perspective, getting the word out there, I do have a gauntlet, right? And my intention is to only let people through that meet my qualifications, right? Kind of the golden rule that you try to put out with some of your stuff as well, Jason. Like, how do I make myself aware to everybody and then narrow that funnel down so that I'm only getting qualified leads coming? So I do it primarily through a couple of means. My probably the most important mean is Google My Business, because I believe that in our business, your Google My Business profile is your number one marketing tool. And the reason I say that is because when people search for handyman, whether they go to Google Maps or whether they just go to Google and open up a browser, when they search handyman, they're auto prompted, right? Handyman near me, handyman near my city. And when they hit that enter button, what happens, right? You get those sponsored, those Google guaranteed, and then you get the organic results that show up that's tied to the map profile. So that's my number one thing. I'm listed number one in that because I put a lot of effort and time into that. And if you follow some of the stuff that you guys put out, you'll get ranked pretty high on that. So that's number one, is getting ranked on Google My Profile. Google My Profile is tied over to my website, where you can learn more about me. And that's where the gauntlet really starts, right? So when you go to my website, it's going to tell you the hours that I work, the services that I perform, the kind of schedule that I work. You're going to learn a little bit more about me. You're going to see links back to my reviews if you didn't read them already on Google My Business. You're going to see my reviews there. So it's always trying to get them to my website. And then the other kind of ways that people get to my website are through Facebook, primarily auto responses. I'm sorry, I'm working right now, or I'm busy. Please visit my website, fill out this form for an estimate. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Nextdoor. Nextdoor, it's good and bad. Nextdoor, I get a lot of business from Nextdoor, but the automation with the Nextdoor just aren't there yet. So there's a lot of manual stuff. If I get a hit on Nextdoor, I generally gotta, when I have a break, I'll go over there and direct people over to my site. But those are the primary areas that I funnel them in. And once they get to my website, I know, or I hope, right, that if they read all the information on my website and they contact me, they know, right? They know I have a minimum. They know my schedule kind of restraints. They've seen my reviews. They know a little bit about me. And that's kind of how I funnel them in. And then that will lead to, okay, can I take them from that lead to a sale and ultimately to an invoice?
Cool.
That's awesome. I just looked you up on Google, typed in handyman near Shirts, Texas, and there, sure enough, there's the Greenshire Handyman. That's awesome. And you got 38 5-star reviews. How do you get reviews? Like what's your tactic for getting those and making sure that they're 5 stars? Like what do you do for that?
Yeah, it's all automatic. So I know we'll get into this a little bit later, but I use Mark8 CRM. I had the add-on, the $10 add-on for review request. Initially, I was doing it manually, right? I was just sending people links to my Google My Business profile, but now it's all kind of automatic. Um, I have a lot of mature clients, right? To say it gently, right? Who don't like technology. So my rate for getting reviews, like they'll tell their neighbors, right? But they're not going to go on Google and fill out my form. So I'm probably like 60% people that I work, not even, probably less than 60% of people that are filling out that form. And sometimes I'll push it, right? Mark8 will send out 3 reminders to get to that. But I kind of get a feeling when I'm working for somebody if they're the kind of type that are going to leave a review or not. I don't pester people. I don't ask for 5-star reviews. I will generally say, hey, this work, the way that I get more work is through reviews. If you like my service, after you get your invoice, you're going to get another request. If you want to help me out, that would be great. But I pretty much leave it at that. I'm at the point where 38 has gotten me to the point where I bumped up in the Google rating, so it's good enough. And then
Mhm.
they'll trickle in slowly over time. And if I get too many, like if I hire Jason, I'll be overwhelmed, right? So I keep them kind of down low because of my part-time status. To be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge with reviews. And I've had a lot of people ask me like, what are some of the first things that I should do? And I always recommend people start up a Google My Business, like you said, and start getting reviews, because getting those reviews is really going to help you start ranking on Google higher. And you can ask people that you've done work for in the past, ask family members that you've worked for, and just get those reviews. Those are really going to help you. Like, I like how you said, getting those 38 reviews, and the more you get, the higher up you rank. I think you're spot on with that. So
Yeah.
Exactly. And
absolutely.
one little tip on that. This happens to a lot of people when you're new. Your first couple of reviews might not make it through, right? Because Google doesn't know about you yet. They don't know if you're working the
Yeah.
system. So I had maybe 4 or 5 reviews that just never went through, and I didn't bother fighting with Google. And I sent them a couple of emails, but just expect that if you're new and trying to start off, that it's going to take a little while for that snowball to get rolling, and then the reviews will start coming in. Nowadays, I don't think they take a lot off. Yelp does. Yelp takes like half of my reviews. I hate Yelp.
Yeah.
We won't get into that.
Yeah, Google's gotten a lot better. They've even improved their verification process, and I hope that holds true in the future. But it's improved last month or two. It's a worthwhile endeavor and persistence to go
Absolutely.
through. Also, the review issue has become less over the last year as well. But all our listeners, I want you guys to Google search Greenshire Handyman TX and also honestly Handyman CA, just to pull up their Google profiles, because something that I want to commend you, AJ, is right when you Google your business name, which like people are going to be searching like handyman near me, handyman shirts, and they're going to see you in the running. But a lot of folks, when they're referred to you, they got your business card, they see you on Facebook, they're actually just going to Google search your business name to learn more about you. And
Yeah.
when you guys search for Greenshire Handyman TX, you're going to see AJ's bright smiley face. He's got the sweet cap on, like the round sunshade hat,
Yeah.
instant personality, like instant
Yeah.
trust and
Exactly.
confidence being built. And then you click over his website, and it's just like the base is there. Like this is the foundation that AJ said is very important. So that personal cover photo is huge. So anyway, that's something that instantly stood out, AJ. Like your bright smiley face, the Google reviews. When you Google Alan's business, it shows his bright smiley faces of his team website. So instantly there's this level of like trust, confidence, professionality that's established like subconsciously almost of like, oh, I'm going to be working with a professional. So in their head, their price just went, okay, this is not a $30 an hour handyman.
Yeah.
This is a professional handyman. So anyway, I commend you for the personality that you put into your website, and then also your Google business cover photo with the reviews is just, it does a lot to build your traction and attract people you want to be attracting.
Yeah. And let me make one point on that too, because you just reminded me. If you go and you look at Google Analytics, my number one search term in for Google My Business profile is Greenshire Handyman. So my
Mhm.
brand name has been established, right? So people like I said, that's a direct shortcut right to right to my website. So, if you can get to that point, it just makes things easier.
Yeah.
Right.
People say word of mouth. I'm a word of mouth handyman. I don't need marketing and all this stuff. It's like, well, that's fine and all, but at least have the Google business profile with a great cover photo,
Absolutely.
because people will search your business name. And if they don't find that,
Yeah.
they could fall off. They could not become interested. They would have no means to contact you. So you've done an awesome job at getting that, just the base of reviews, nice personality to build trust with ideal prospects.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
the,
that.
the way that I love to put Google My Business is like your online resume. Like when you're looking to hire someone, you want their resume, you want their background, you want some people that recommend them, and some people that you could call and ask about them. That's exactly what a Google My Business is when a homeowner is looking to hire you, they're going to pull up your resume online, which is your Google My Business, and that has all your reviews, all your pictures, your past jobs, where you're located, your website, your email address, like everything a resume would have. So at least do yourself a favor and get yourself a resume. You
Yeah.
need one. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for any listeners that haven't started that, definitely get your business actually set up, LLC, whatever that looks like on the business side, because in the verification process, a lot of times Google's wanting to see that. So as if you listen to our episodes before, you know that we advise the professional doing it right. Don't shortcut, get the insurance, get established with your state. So it's important for Google as well to get verified.
Yeah, and there's a free download over at handymanmarketingpros.com about Google My Business and stuff like that. That would be super helpful for you as
Yeah,
well.
optimization of it, everything. Google is so important, absolutely critical. So let's like zoom this out a little bit before we go back in the trenches of, because definitely want to hear about like your pricing and quoting, like once someone goes through your gauntlet, which I think is a funny way to put it. But ultimately, that's what we want people to do, right? To go through our
Yeah.
set processes, because when they go through that sales process, they are at least some level pre-qualified. They're going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
So let's look at like part-time handyman, AJ. Like what kind of like revenue numbers are you like have you done over the years? Whatever you don't mind sharing, just to kind of set that expectation for folks listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Let me warn your audience: be prepared to be underwhelmed. Some of the numbers I put out, some of you guys may be knocking out in a week or so. But again, keep in mind, I'm only doing this, a few hours here and there, and my months change. Some months I make a lot, and some months I don't. But I started off in 2022, right? In 2022, um, what did I pull in? I pulled in a gross of $18,808. I had expenses of 11,000 because I bought a bunch of tools and other things I was getting started. Plus, my pricing was horrible and terrible. So that first year, I only netted around $7,000, and a lot of things I didn't know. Right, you hear about it all when everybody starts off. My pricing was terrible. I think I did the math on the amount of hours that I put in that first year and how much I made. It was like $13 an hour. It was horrible. But where else do you get paid money to learn something like that, right? So I figured I
Right.
considered a learning experience that I went through, and I learned and I grew a lot, right? So fast forward to 2023, my numbers jumped up a bit. So I went from 18,000 in 2022 to about 35,000 in 2023. Expenses around $15,000. And then a net of around 5,000. So my net was smaller in 2023 because I learned a lot about tax strategy, and I started employing my children as part of that tax strategy. We can get into that a little bit later, but a large portion of my gross income went to my children who were under 18. I have an 18, well, he's 18 now, but he was 17 at the time. That was my number one helper, right? So he was out on jobs with me. And if you have children that are under 18, the benefits to you as a business owner and the benefits to them as an 18-year-old, like I funded his IRA for a couple of years doing this kind of strategy, which is fantastic. And set him up to be a millionaire. And then my younger one, who just turned 13, he helps me with the bookkeeping, right? So I'm pretty methodical about electronic bookkeeping, but then I have the paperwork trail that I hate doing. So I just bring him in here. I'm like, all right, grab all the receipts, fill out all that stuff. I'll give him Mark8. I'll say, open up Mark8, and then start categorizing everybody in terms of the lead, the where they came in from. So he does all that kind of stuff for me. And same type of thing. I throw money out his way. In terms of 2024, where I am right now, I'm about $7,800 for the year. I haven't worked for the last like month and a half, really. I had family in town and some other things going on, which is one of the great things about being a part-time guy, right? Like
Mm.
I had family visiting, I just didn't work, right? I put some notices out on my Facebook page, and I'm not working for the next month and a half, and no big deal, right? The mortgage still being paid, everything else is taken care of.
And we're 4
Um,
months in for our listeners, by the way. This is
yeah, thanks. Yeah.
April. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got on the books right now. I probably have another $2,000 on the books right now. Small jobs here and there. If I really hit it towards the later part of summer, I'll probably close out around 30,000. I get one of my oldest son
Mhm.
is joining the Navy this summer, so I'm trying to spend a lot of time with him before he takes off. And then once he takes off, then I'll probably get back into it full time. But those are my numbers. Those are real numbers. I put that out. I'm not ashamed of that. It's what I make, and it's what I make part time, and I'm all right with it because it pays for vacations and other things that we try to use.
Heck yeah. That's
Yeah,
really great. And I love that you said, using those tax advantages to help, fund your kids' IRA and stuff. Like, there's so much you can do. And I'm
yeah,
not by any means a tax advisor or CPA or anything like that. I use a tax advisor, and she's advised me over the years, depending on your business structure, you can actually pay your kids up to a certain amount, whether they're above 18, below 18, like depending on your business structure. And so one thing that we do through one of our sole proprietorships is we fund our kids, IRAs and custodial accounts and things like that for using them in our marketing. Like basically we take, we use them in our marketing in pictures and stuff like that, and they get, compensation for that. Now, again, don't take my information. Don't go and, get yourself sued or in trouble with the IRS. Talk to a tax advisor. But there's a lot of stuff you can do to lower your taxable income as a self-employed individual. So I love that you brought that up because I think that's very important. And I love that you brought it up that you're setting your kid up to be a millionaire. Like,
oh yeah,
at the end of the day, we're living our lives, right? And so I think one huge thing that I look forward to, and a lot of people look forward to in this handyman industry, is to create a legacy, to leave something beyond for our kids so that they can have a better life than us. And
yeah,
business allows us to do that in many different ways than just working hard with hammers every single day. There's
yeah.
wise tax things that we can do to help set our kids up financially. So I love that you brought that up. That's
Yeah.
huge.
And the task too of like market lead, tagging leads, like really practical skills that what other kids are getting an opportunity, like in a small business, the wide range of skills and things you have to learn to even run it part-time, it's vast and great experience to give to kids to set them up for success. One thing too, I just want to call out is like you mentioned last year, like the first full year in business, roughly like what did you say, 35,000 in
30,
revenue,
35, yeah.
about 15 in expenses. So if we block out all the tax stuff you did, like that's 20 grand, which is about 1,700 a month, extra side like income. That's very significant for a
Yeah.
part-time business. So I commend you for running this as a dedicated sole part-time thing,
Mhm.
AJ, because what an amazing blessing I'm sure that is for your family as well, and something you get to enjoy
Yeah.
doing.
And you can
Yeah.
you can couple it with your personal life, right? So part of those expenses is, if you can couple things you're going to do anyway, like almost all of my mileage is coupled with things I'm going to do personally anyway.
Mm.
Like I went to Houston several months ago. While I was there, I looked at some work trucks that I was legitimately interested in, and then I went on vacation, right? That
Mhm.
mileage over there was to look at the work truck. That's completely legitimate. And again, we're not tax advisors, but if you do your research, I always recommend there's a book out there by Bernard Kamaroff called 475 Tax Deductions. Great book, The Wealthy Accountant. He's got a great article on paying your kids. Just do your research and then talk to a professional that you work with to get insight into this. And tell them, hey, this is my life. This is how I live. How can I leverage my business to facilitate some tax savings and ultimately put some money in your pocket?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the listeners out there, I just want to recommend, so our personal tax advisor, her name is Dee Dee Stone. If you guys are interested in, don't know who to talk to, she's a remote lady. She actually lives there in Texas, but she does work for people all around the United States. So I'd recommend you reach out to her. I'm not affiliated with her. I don't get any money from her or anything like that, but she's been absolutely fantastic. So if you're looking to meet with someone, you can set up a call with her on her website. I think it's like $300 for an hour, which seems like a lot, but insane amount of information if you're interested in that.
Awesome.
On this note, guys, one question I have for you, AJ, to get your perspective on something that I love about what you do is most part-time handymen or side hustle, which I don't even like to call it that because you have a business. Like what would you say, like a conversation around the typical side hustle handyman, which is kind of the chuck in the truck, right? That kind of can give the handyman industry a bad name. What are the big benefits, and like what would you say to anyone doing this on the side but has not set up their business well? Like they don't have the LC, they don't have a website, they don't have Google profile. Like what would you tell them, like the benefits of doing it right?
Yeah, so let me go back to the first thing you said about being a business. I don't truly consider myself as a business. I mean, technically I'm a business, but I consider myself to be a self-employed handyman, kind of a side hustle, right? Because business, I can step away from it and it would run itself, and that's not what I have right now. And I could grow that, but I consider myself more of a self-employed kind of person. But in terms of your question, setting that stuff up, first of all, you got to look long term, right? Do you want to be doing this stuff for the next 5 years? If you don't even get into it, right? Take some time to sit back and reflect on kind of where you want to go. And if you see yourself being in this kind of work in the next 5 years, then you start to say, okay, what do I want to look like in 5 years, right? I want to look like a person that has all these 5-star reviews. I want to be known. Like, what do you want your reputation to be known as, right? I want to be known as having integrity, having honesty, being reliable. And how do I establish those things, right? I set up businesses or not, I set up processes to lead towards those characteristics, right? I had a great I went to a leadership lecture a long time ago by a really smart physicist, and he boiled kind of leading down to 3 different things. And he said you have to have authority, competence, and trust. He's like, people get authority just with their position. Competence is demonstrated, through applied, application over time. But trust is really what you're trying to get to, right? Because you can get the trust with just competence, even if you have no authority technically. If you are competent over and over, you lead to trust. So I ultimately am trying to lead to trust with the people that I work with, and that trust is through kind of an open window into my world, into my website, into all my reviews. I'm not trying to hide anything. I don't change my phone numbers. So the more that you put yourself out there and make yourself known, the more accountable you are to yourself, and you're more accountable you are to the people that you're working and serving. And if you do a good job and you stick to those principles that you live by, it'll come, right? And that's kind of my advice that people kind of getting started, is to figure out what your why is, figure out what your core principles are, and then start to live by them and demonstrate them. And then just be patient. You gotta wait. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to slowly happen. It's going to snowball, and then you'll get to a point where you're established. And then you have to maintain it. Like, don't give up. You got to maintain it. And if you start to expand and bring other people in, you have to, kind of like Alan does. Like, you have to instill that with your employees, right? And if they don't demonstrate that, you got to find employees who do demonstrate that kind of stuff.
Cool. Great advice. One kind of related to this is, do you ever see yourself being a full-time handyman and taking your business full-time? Because that must be a benefit of you. It's an option because you
Yeah.
have the website, Google reviews, LLC. It is a business that's kind of set up and could be full-time. Do you plan on doing that, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's an off ramp for me right now, to be honest with you. I would love to do it full time. But it goes back to those golden handcuffs. In order to do that full time, I have to throw away those handcuffs right now. And to me, when I weigh that kind of stuff out, it's just not worth it. However, there's a possibility that, the economy can change. There's downsizing. I can get an early out, or some other things, at which point I just switch right over to handyman. So in a perfect world, yeah, I would be doing the handyman stuff full time, because I absolutely love it, right? When I'm in that work, I'm in the zone. I'm completely satisfied with the work that I do. I'm a manual labor at heart. I love doing manual labor kind of work. I get a great satisfaction out of it. So for right now, if the opportunity presents itself for me to go full time, and really the only thing would be is I receive a severance and I can retire immediately, I would make that move. Other than that, I'm planning to stay part time.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, going from so in your day you go from big United Government weapons acquisitions to replacing a ceiling fan.
Yeah, but and it's funny because majority of the time, like there's instant gratification, right? Like I even worked for one of my neighbors here recently, and she had a faucet that was wiggly for years, right? I went over there and swapped that thing out, made it, she gave me a big hug, right? And that's why I do this work. It's because you're bringing happiness and peace to people's life at a reasonable rate, right? And that's what people want. They have problems in their life. They want you to come in and solve those problems. And when you do that, it's instant gratification. The gratification in my day job is sometimes a little bit slower. Sometimes it's there, but the majority of the time, it's not as immediate as you get with handyman.
Cool. Related to this as well, before I know we definitely want to jump into your pricing journey. I know I mean, time's flying here, man. But what considerations would you have for, you've touched on some of these already, but what considerations would you have for leaving a full-time job to go into a business full-time? Like anyone that's out there that is already part-time, they've got a full-time job. I know it's a very popular conversation on Facebook. It's a question that we see in the group quite a bit of, when do I leave? When do I go full-time? So what considerations, as someone who's been in it and has the golden handcuffs, like what considerations should people be thinking about when they are making this decision?
Hey friends, pardon the interruption here of this episode, but I want to tell you about something huge that is going on right now. Our brand new book, The Handyman Freedom Formula, Volume 1, Mindset and Company Culture, is available right now for pre-sale on Amazon. So you can go over to Amazon right now and pre-order this book so that it's in your hands when it launches on Independence Day, July 4th. We have talked to thousands of handyman business owners, and they all have one thing in common. They wish that they spent more time and knew a little bit more when it came to mindset and company culture. So we put together this book that is hugely impactful and will give you the resources that you need to not only have the mindset to start this business, but the mindset to grow it and to create a company culture to make an impact in this world and beyond. So do me a favor, and if you're interested in that, head over to Amazon right now and type in Handyman Freedom Formula and pre-order your copy of this book. Let's get back to today's episode.
Yeah, I think it's important. Anytime you have to make a big decision, it's important to write it down, right? Get a notebook out, get some time, and ask yourself questions. Because when you write out questions and you answer them, your mind works a little bit different. So that's the first thing: is get out a pad and a pen and start writing questions down. And the first thing would be, what are the pros and cons of staying with my current job versus leaving, right? And you can further bucket that down. Financially, what's the difference, right? And it's important when you look financially, you're not just looking at salary, but you're looking at your total benefit package, if you will, right? So if you're making $100,000 in salary, what is your total benefit package? It may be $200,000, right? Maybe you have a fantastic healthcare plan. Maybe you have 401k matching. Maybe you have a stock ownership plan. Like there's a lot of different things that you should take into consideration. In my case, I have a pension, right? And we talked a little bit before this conversation that I'm pretty well into my pension. I'm 20, actually, almost 30 years into my pension because I bought some of my military time back. So that pension has a value, and the current value of that pension is around $2 million because the amount of money that it's going to generate over my expected lifetime, if I were to extract that out and amortize it out, it would be worth about $2 million of money at this time. So I have to consider that. And if you're in a kind of corporate job and you have those types of benefits, you have to consider that. So that's number one: is where are you at kind of financially. Then there's the work life balance. Like, well, yeah, you have the work life balance. What kind of balance do you have at your day job now versus what do you think you'll have if you switch over? I'm pretty fortunate that I have a pretty decent balance in my day job right now. It actually gets out of balance a little bit with the handyman stuff, so I've had to manage that a little bit. Um, then I would say age comes into it, right? How much time do you have, right? Because if you have plans to retire at some point, you want to build up a nest egg, your timing of this depends. If I could travel back in time, maybe when I was 26 years old, my questions and my answers would be way different than they are right now. So just be honest with yourself. Take the input of your family, especially if you're married. You have a big voice in this, but your spouse also has a big voice in this, or your partner, whoever you're with, has a big voice in this as well. And if they're not comfortable with that, like you got to take that into consideration. You can't just be like, we're cutting the cord, we're going all in, because you're going to freak them out, right? So understand what your partner cares about. My wife, she tells me all the time, nobody quits a government job. Like when I first started it, I was like, I'm done, I'm leaving. And she's like, nobody does that. And I was like, well, you don't understand. Like when I'm on a handyman job, like I just get this great sense of satisfaction. And she was wise, right? Because I'd be
Forget
honest with
your
you, I was ready to be like,
satisfaction.
yeah. She's like,
Just kidding.
she's like, just do it for a while. Don't make any rash decisions. And so those are a combination of things. And again, recommend writing it all down and be honest with you, because what you write down is going to be true, whether you like it or not. And you're going to look at it and like, oh, don't be tempted to cross them out, because you don't like what it says. That came out of your mind, and your mind is right. And when you put it on paper, it's telling you the truth. So weigh all that stuff out and then decide. And if you're on the fence, do part-time, right? Do part-time, say I'm going to do part-time for 6 months, a year, whatever it may be. I told you guys a little bit of a story before we started, but I met with another handyman, their first guest, Paul from PJP Handyman. I went out and I bought him breakfast, and I understood his story a little bit from the podcast. But I asked him, "Hey, you're in my boat. What do you do?" And he's like, "How much do you make right now?" And I told him, he's like, "I'd probably stay put." I was like, "Yeah, but you got this big business." He's like, "Yeah, but he's like, I would probably stay put given what you just told me." And I reflected on that, right? It went back to my list of things to write down. I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting him to say that. Because you get a lot of people in the Facebook group, especially, they're like, "Oh, just drop it all and go there." And please keep in mind all the things that I've mentioned, and be honest with yourself. And there's no shame in doing it part-time for a while and deciding what you want.
Yeah, I love something you said, before we got on this, is that, like, should you go full time, right? Not everyone should. Like it's,
Yeah.
everyone's life is different, and you have to evaluate it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the amazing impact that the side income, 1,500, 2,000 a month, that can have on a household is significant. And especially if you enjoy the work, I mean, that's just got to be, I mean, of course there is stress and things that doesn't go wrong, but that's just an amazing thing to be able to do. And one quick, we also mentioned this before we hit the record button, but shout out to Paul Pacheco, our first guest was about 3 years ago. And what's funny is that we have went full circle around the country. We started in San Antonio, and then 3 years later, we're back in San Antonio with AJ.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Hey, AJ, I would love to hear a little bit about your pricing journey and what that looked like. Like you said, back in 2022, you started working for that neighbor. You needed some work done, and you kind of laid out what your revenue looked like throughout the years. What did it look like on that very first job? Like, what did you charge, and how does that differ from what you're charging now? And kind of how did you get to that point?
Sure. Yeah. So like everybody else, I started off low, right? I went to my pay stub, and I looked at like the basic pay with none of the other benefits, right? And it was like $65 an hour. And I said, all right, I'll just charge $65 an hour, and then I'll be making the same I'm making in my day job. And then I started doing jobs, and I'm like, man, I'm just, first of all, $65 an hour was way low. And then second of all, when I estimated an hour, it actually meant 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
I was, divide 65 by 3, because, you're bad at figuring out how much time it's going to take you. And then you're bad at pricing when you first start off. So I was going through this, and my wife, I come home and she's like, how much did you make? I was like, like $100. She's like, you were gone all day. I know, but I loved it, right? I was doing this and that. And, she just liked that I was out there doing fun stuff. Then I went out and I bought your book, right? And I read it, and I'm like, duh. Like it's simple advice, right? If you just, and I'm a numbers guy, right? I'm a spreadsheet guy. I said, well, duh, like I just write all that stuff out and figure out my number. So my number became like 125 to 130 an hour. And I started charging that. And again, there's a lot of, oh man, that's way too much. But I started to find my crowd and my audience. So that's my numbers have kind of evolved largely because of the book you wrote. And so I appreciate that. And I went through that. I figured out what my number was, and that's something I can live with, right? I know I can go more. I know I can go less, and sometimes I do. If I really don't want to do a job, I go more. And if my heart's bleeding for somebody that really needs help, it goes lower. That's the reality. But it moves around 125 right now. So that's kind of how it's evolved. And then from an estimating perspective, we all have to go through this process, right? Of figuring out what does it take. And you see these questions nonstop in the group. Hey, what do you charge for this? What do you charge for this? My advice to everybody out there is, first of all, do research, right? Figure out. We all recommend HomeWise, or go to HomeWise, see what they're estimating in there for your particular region. It'll estimate time, it'll estimate dollar values, and then reflect on your skill set. Do I have the ability to do that? Do I have the tools that are going to make it quicker? As you start to do that, you start to calibrate how much time does it take you to do certain things. So I'm at a point right now where the estimates come in, the work I don't want to do, I haven't done, I just turn down, or I push over to Paul a lot of times. And then the work that I do want to do, I know exactly how much time it's going to take me to do certain jobs. I know the questions to ask to get to the information. Like somebody, before we got on this call, asked me to swap out 2 ceiling fans, right? And I know a lot of people are trying to use AI for this stuff. If I could have my AI chatbot say, is there wiring in place? What's the ceiling height? Is it a chandelier fan or something else crazy? If not, you can get it down. Okay, it's going to be $150, $175 per fan, and I can be over there in X day. So I'm at that point right now where I'm estimating in 5 minutes. Right, it's really, really pretty quick. But it's been an evolution kind of over time, and I'm a very process oriented person. If we get into the questions, if we have time, I'll talk a little bit kind of about my primary processes and the supporting processes underneath them.
Yeah. So, and quick shout out too to AJ, like your YouTube channel is called Handyman Process. And it's largely content revolving around like being a part-time handyman. That's really helpful for part-time handyman. I'm sure helpful for any handyman. So definitely check out his YouTube channel, Handyman Process. So like kind of, we got another like 5 or 10 minutes here, man. So like you mentioned, like definitely curious about like these more specifics to your process. Is there enough time to kind of jump into that real quick? And we definitely want to hear about like biggest wins and losses in your handyman journey, and then parting advice. So just to kind of, we got a few more things we want to cover here in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure. Yes, I'll walk through the process really,
Yeah.
really quickly. So there's a horizontal process that I think we all go through, and that horizontal process starts from an inquiry, somebody asking you for something, over to an estimate / work order, over to scheduling that work, completing the work, and then getting paid for that work. That process goes on and on, right? Every job that we do, that process in some form or fashion is replicated. But that process, that horizontal process, step 1 to step 5, is supported by sub processes. The inquiry is supported by my marketing processes that we talked about before. The estimating is supported by some of the things that we just talked about: experience and tools, HomeWise and other types of tools, Alan's book, other types of things that support the estimating process. The payment process is supported by payment processing applications, Square integration, your CRM, whatever you may use. And then you have processes that span or support all of that horizontal process. Your CRM, whatever you may use, your customer relations management platform. There's a ton of them out there, but they usually manage, tip to tail from that step 1 to step 5. You have your banking and bookkeeping process. Again, it goes across the whole thing. You have compliance, legal compliance, tax, risk mitigation processes that are underlying that. Then you kind of other nebulous things like mileage tracking, insurance, other kind of things. It's all supporting that one horizontal process. So as you go forward, you're building out your matrix of what your horizontal process is and what those supporting sub processes are, and you use what works best for you. You hear a lot of good tips and advice from these podcasts and from people in the group, and then every handyman is going to grab the bits and pieces that work best for them, and they're going to build their processes. But it's going to look something similar to what I just described. So that's a quick overview of the process.
Yeah, I love how you outline that, especially in the beginning of identifying the repeatables that for every transaction, every customer, because when you identify those and write them down, I also love that point of advice is if you don't write it down, you're going to forget. It's just a thought that's going to go away. So write stuff down as a business owner, but when you can identify that, you can then create a repeatable, amazing customer experience with whatever you can repeatably do. So I think that's really good, like laying out of like really quickly the horizontal process there. What kind of, if you had to share like your biggest win, biggest loss that comes to mind as far as, in your handyman journey, like what comes to mind, AJ, as far as some wins and losses?
Sure. Yeah. But before I get into that, I'll just foot stomp on what you just mentioned about the process, repetition is the mother of skill, right? So the more you can repeat the same thing over and over, the quicker you get skills. So whatever your processes are, repeat them as often as you can to build up that skill.
Mhm.
But to get into kind of what's worked well and what hasn't worked well, I'll talk about the things that have worked well and then things that haven't worked well. So the things that work well in my business and probably in this business in general is timely and clear communication. There are times when you just have to be open and with people. That's probably the biggest complaint that people have. They never called me back. They didn't show up when they said they were going to show up. Be timely and very clear in your communication and just be honest, right? Bad news doesn't get better with age. So if you have bad news, share it immediately. If you have good news, share it immediately.
Hmm.
Just stay in communication with people. Do not ghost people, number one. Number two, being honest. I like honestly handyman. You can't get any better than that. But that's what people want, right? Because you're going to be in people's homes and they want somebody they feel comfortable and trustworthy with. So work towards establishing that honesty. And if you don't get it right away, you haven't earned it, right? So earn it, earn that honest reputation, and that's done through repetition, kind of over and over again. And again, it leads to the trust building, the authority, confidence, trust that I talked about before. What hasn't gone well for me personally is taking on too much work. I remember when I first started this, Jason, I reached out to you to kind of get your what services you can provide, and when you described it to me, I was like, I'm going to be swamped. Like if he delivers on that, like I'm going to be overwhelmed like tomorrow. And if you're full time, that's a great problem to have, right? But as a part time guy, I'm like, I'm not ready for that level of phone calls coming in yet. So if you're in a spot, like me as this part-time guy, you have to be very careful about taking on too much work. The second thing is taking on jobs you're not good at. I mentioned drywall before. I had to learn very painfully through losing money, through doing bad work, through, all sorts of stuff. I don't do drywall anymore. Be honest with yourself. If you're not good at certain things, like some of the questions scare me sometimes when people are like, hey, I just took apart this electrical thing. How does it work? How do I put it back together? Don't do those jobs, right?
Yeah.
At least build skill up before you do those types of jobs. You have to be honest with yourself. And then the biggest thing is the family life balance. I was really bad at it at first. My wife was quick to remind me that I was really bad at it, and which I needed at the time. So be cognizant of that, right? Because you'd be very excited when you first start out. You want to go out, you want to kill something and drag it back to the cave. But if nobody's back in the cave because they're tired of you leaving, like, what's the point, right? So maintain that throughout your processes, and you should be all right.
Love
Those are
it.
those are
Love
my
it.
big what went well and what didn't go well.
Man, that's amazing. So, what kind of parting advice would you have for listeners that are listening and maybe they're thinking about starting this thing full time or part time in this instance? What kind of advice would you have for these people? Or maybe they are part time right now. What kind of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, so I would recommend go back, listen to all these podcasts, right? Because you're going to learn different perspectives. There's all sorts of different people you can learn from. So listen to the podcast, read as much as you can, get some of Alan's books, go to Handyman Marketing Pro, see what these free resources they have available. Reach out for coaching if you need it. And then be prepared, right? You're going to do fulfilling work in this stuff. Think about why we didn't get into this, but what is your why? When you go back to your pen and paper, write down, why do I want to do this, right? What's my big why for this? And my big why is I want to help people. That's the number one thing I love. I get no more satisfaction than at helping people, right? I want to help people. I want to solve problems. I have an engineering kind of mind. So I love, people have problems and they're not easily solved. I can come over and I offer solutions that I take for granted. And if you're handy, maybe you take for granted, oh, all you got to do is this, right? A lot of people can't do that, right? They don't even think about that. So there's a lot of satisfaction in some of that stuff. And don't rush to just drop everything and go full time would be my final advice. Go full time. Start part time, see if you like it, build up your processes, get that repetition over and over again, see if it's something that you can maintain and manage, and then have the conversation with your spouse or your partner to decide if it is something you want to do. And then if you do, make the move and then stay engaged with the group and keep us informed on how it's going. So that would be my parting advice.
Sweet. Yeah. And he mentioned too the Facebook groups. We've got links
Yeah.
to those like in the videos and stuff, but the Handyman Journey Mastermind, the Handyman Success Mastermind are Facebook groups. And it's also a pleasure. AJ, I know you're super active in the group, man. So we really appreciate all the insight and help that you give to people on your YouTube channel. And it's also cool now, Alan, like we've been doing this now for what, 6, 7 years, when you started Handyman Charity Mastermind group like 7 or 8 years ago now. And to see people come into the group and start a business and like at different times. So AJ, it's so cool to see you come in this and you know, pave your own way as like a really great like almost a leader of like the part-time dedicated part-time handyman business. So I really appreciate you sharing your perspective on everything.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, one final note too. I didn't mention it, but I participate in the Handyman Journey shop talk that happens every week or so. I think Mike Kleisch is running that. If you just want to get some perspective and touch base with some other folks, it's a great resource as well. I don't know if it's linked in the main group or not, but another great avenue just to chit chat with people, and you know, maybe you lead on to professional coaching and then take that next step, which a lot of people in that group have gone from that group into more of the professional coaching stuff.
All right, friends, that's a wrap of this episode of the Handyman Success Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on your journey in building a thriving handyman business. We would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Whether you learned something new or you're facing challenges that you're just not quite sure how to deal with, we would absolutely love to hear from you. We would love it if you would leave us a review, drop us a comment, or hit that like button telling us that you liked this episode. By doing this, you truly help and support us in creating more of these podcast episodes to help change the handyman industry to something amazing. And I want you to remember that you are not alone on this journey. Jason and I are here to help. If you need anything at all in regards to business or marketing, you can reach out to either Jason or I at handymansuccess.net. You can go over there right now and set up a free consultation call with either of us. We would absolutely love to talk with you. So thanks again for spending this time with us. And until next time, go out and be a blessing.